And good evening. I'm Jonathan Higgins.
I'm Rich Carlson.
Hey, I'm Chuck Gysi with National Communications Magazine.
Hey, we are the Scanner Guys, and we have a great interview planned for tonight with Chuck. So thank you so much for joining us. If you're joining us for the first time on the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We're going to go over a couple of slides to get some business done here. As always, the Scanner Guys are brought to you by Scanner Master. Make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to our social media over at the Scanner Guys, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And make sure you check out our blog, thescannerguyshow.com. And while you're there, you can shop our store for hats, t-shirts, and coffee mugs, and some more stuff I'm sure coming soon. So definitely shop our store. You can do that at thescannerguyshow.com. And while you're there, sign up for our newsletter. We haven't sent one in a while, but we're sure probably going to send one relatively soon. So definitely sign up for our newsletter. We don't sell your information. It's safe with us. And we don't spam your email. We only send it occasionally. So definitely sign up for our newsletter at our website, thescannerguyshow.com. So we have a great interview in store for everybody that's joining us this evening. So welcome to this great show that we're having tonight. We're talking to Chuck from the National Communication Magazine. The first question that we normally ask everybody that joins us, how did you get into this hobby that we all love?
Sure. Like most of us, it's back to our childhoods. And my dad was a volley and in suburban Philadelphia. And I remember we had, it wasn't even a plectron. It was an early tone decoder device. I mean, this goes back to the early 1960s, I think. And that came into our house, and of course that'd go off. We know when the fire was and whatever. And we moved to another town, and we got one of those 8-channel crystal Regency scanners, sat in our dining room and loaded up with all the crystals and used to listen to it all the time. My dad picked up an old Hallicrafter's S95 VHF high receiver, and that sat on his dresser in the bedroom. And we had little marks on it where the turnpike was, where the fire channel was, and you could tune that dial back and forth. Of course, you had to kind of do it while they're transmitting. Now, the turnpike was busy enough that would work. Fires, you only when there's a fire, you could really tune that thing in. So yeah. I still have that receiver today. It still works. It's the last time I had it out of the box or whatever. And, from there, eventually wound up buying my I got involved with the rescue squad in high school, so I carried an old SBE pocket scanner with me, 4 channels, so I could listen to fire, police, the squad, and our county ambulance channel, especially in high school and stuff, and through college. And then eventually the synthesized scanners are coming out, and latched onto a Bearcat 101. It didn't work well for me, so I sent it back to Electric Corporation back in Indiana. I said, "Nah, this thing isn't working." So they sent me another one. Nah, that one wasn't working well either. So I'm done with this. So I went and bought a Regency Touch ACT 16K, and that was, I did all kinds of fun stuff with that, searching and stuff. And of course, the problem with that is, I sat on top of a hill where I lived in suburban Philadelphia, so I had great reception. Every time the weather transmitter keyed up and the Sun Oil refiner, I think it was on 151.775, they mixed together, blocked me out everything on VHFI. I just couldn't hear anything except the two of them mixing together. So it was a real pain because they were both, that refiner was pretty active in South Philly. So, but eventually, I've gone through lots of scanners through the year, just like most of us here. But that was so much fun. And I used to go to the FCC office in Philadelphia, and they had the microfiche for all the licensees. And I'd sit there for days. They must have thought I was a whack job. But I'd sit there and hand copy all the licenses down into a notebook. And then I go home and I try and listen to stuff. But I literally copy everything down. Of course, that kind of was a good thing because I used a lot of that when I started working with Rich Barnett and Scanner Master producing a book for the Philadelphia area, a lot of those notes I had from those episodes with the FCC staff proved to be pretty valuable at that point. So I had a lot of good information. And of course, then the time came where you could actually buy the microfiche and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, I go back quite a long ways, back to tunable receivers and crystal scanners, and they still have a place today, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this hobby, when it started out, wasn't the most easiest to be able to get information. Right. I mean, you really had to work at it, or, directories came into play. And you were able, word of mouth, like sometimes, I remember going to the local Radio Shack store. If you had someone that was knowledgeable, they may have their own list outside the police calls books. And the police call books were only published once a year. The same thing with Scanner Master books. They weren't published, they published, once a year, or not as often, not as often and updated as radio references today. I mean, there's daily updates that occur.
We get complaints that they did a submission on Thursday and it's not there on Friday.
Sure. Yeah, yet you actually waited for the new police calls to come out. I mean, it was like in some areas, you literally had to know the manager of the Radio Shack store in order to make sure you got that copy when it came out that day.
Yeah.
We knew which Radio Shacks used to have them earlier, and we'd drive all the way across this town to get them,
Absolutely. I'd actually lived in a place in New Jersey where the database manager for police call lived as well. He lived about 10 miles away from me. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure I got to meet him at one point. We sat down and talked with him. And, but what they did back then, the data that they managed, and compared to what's done today with computers, is a whole different story.
Oh, yeah. And I was one of those guys that got the all 9 volumes in a box every year. Yeah. And, the amount of work that we put into it was minuscule compared to the amount of work that Gene did.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we took we made police call what it is. I think those of us who participate as editors, whether we're adding, channel numbers and names to the frequencies or even the back, I handled the trunking stuff for the longest time. Mm-hmm. And I hate to say this, but I got to know so much of the country just working on that trunking stuff. I mean, there's places I've never heard of before, but now I see and hear them. I say, I remember working on their trunking system and police. I remember them quite well. Yeah. So, I mean,
we do the same thing when Jonathan and I talk to people on the phone. It's, we'd never heard of Dubuque before, but I talked to somebody there 3 weeks ago, and now I know all about it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is the second somebody rolls what city or town they're on, I'm not thinking of the tourist attractions. I'm thinking of, you got a P25, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And being rail fans, we know what railroads run through.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So are you a rail fan, Chuck?
It's funny. I do monitor the stuff. I would not consider myself a diehard rail fan. When my oldest son was younger, we used to actually go and watch. I had a I can't remember exactly. Probably a Bearcat 100. And it's 100 channels. You can program the 97 railroad frequencies in there. And he used to carry that around. We just sat there and we watched trains. We did it out at Horseshoe Curve. We went out there and he carried his Bearcat 100, and we listened to the trains coming through and stuff. So he had an interest in trains, probably more so than I did, but that was cool. And but yeah, I mean, I keep an ear on the train. I actually live in a very remote rural area, and the closest trains that even pass near me are probably about 30 to 40 miles away. So I can maybe hear the towers. I don't hear any trains here. I mean, if I'm mobile, I may, if I'm listening. But yeah, so I love to see trains and stuff, but I'm not a big rail fan, but I definitely am cognizant of it and kind of keep attention to it.
Yeah. Well, where I used to live, I lived a block or less than a block from the line. And I could walk out my front yard and see the trains. Jonathan, that's about where you're at right now.
Yeah. I mean, at a quiet night, I mean, unfortunately, the crossings are quiet crossings, but occasionally they will blow the horn.
Yeah.
And on a quiet night, it sounds like the train's passing by the house. That's how close I am.
I had a situation at one place I was working, and had a place I was renting when I stayed there, and the trains were about a half block from the house. And the same situation, most of the time they're quiet, but all of a sudden there's a couple nights like boom, it's like, oh man, I just want to go back to sleep now. Yeah. But yeah, I've lived in some areas where there has been a lot more rail activity. Used to live in one area where there's some shops and kind of kept an eye on kept an ear on those. Not too far here from Galesburg, Illinois, which is a pretty significant BN presence down there. And I can hear some of the stuff, just not all the time, all that well. So, but yeah, I keep an ear on stuff.
So, what do you like to monitor? I mean, it sounds like in the beginning it was public safety. Have you, and then you've we know that you listen to railroads. What else do you tap in and listen to?
Well, I subscribe to the theory. I think it was the Ohio Scanner Club had. It was "In God We Trust, All Others We Monitor." And I do. I literally monitor just about everything. Because I do live in a remote area, there isn't a whole lot of formulas. Public safety, obviously, everything here is on VHF-I, except for the state of Illinois trunk system, STARCOM 21. And the only thing on that in our county is state police. So nobody else has migrated to that. So I do hear that. But I'm involved with search and rescue as well in our community here. So I do have a need to kind of keep an ear on things. A lot of times late at night here, I'll be sitting at the desk and I hear somebody's missing. I say, okay, well, we might need to get going on this. So, so I do keep an ear on in that regard. But I like to listen to a lot of different things. I like to listen to a lot of business stuff. I listen to most of the businesses in town because I can. Why not? Yeah. A couple of my favorite scanning targets are federal government. Done that for years, and here's every once in a while, stuff just comes in here, even though as remote as I am, there's surveillance or something that's going on, and I hear it. Retail. I love listening to retail. Like we'll go to the mall. The wife goes into the mall. I sit in the parking lot with my GRE PSR 500 and the TRX1 search for stuff, and and that's my activity. And casinos, I love listening to casinos. They're just fun to listen to, and a lot of them have moved to DMR, so that's why the TRX1 certainly makes it a little easier to listen in on those. But most retail is still analog. That's the cool thing about it. And a lot of them are not licensed, or they are licensed under a corporate group license, and trying to figure out who's using what sometimes is a struggle. So you may pick up things, and it's an art really to sit there and listen to, and you may hear them mention an item, and you Google the barcode or whatever, and it's the Gap store.
Well, that's what close calls is great for. It's, I use that. I go through the mall. My wife will be shopping. I'll have the scanner with a pair of headphones on close call, and I'll have all the frequencies for all the shops by the time she's done shopping.
Absolutely. I used to go. We used to live in Minnesota for a while, and I used to go to the Mall of America, and we drop every time family visit us. They wanted to go to the Mall of America. Okay, I've been here, done that. Don't need to do it again, but I'll take you there. So so I pick a table on the third level up by all the dining locations there, and just sit there, and I break open my backpack, and the scanners are going, and they're shopping, and I'm just sitting there picking off stuff left and right, trying. But of course, at that location, you have the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, literally right across the highway. So even with a stubby duck or something, you're still going to pick up stuff from the airport. So it's always kind of fun, trying to figure out what's what, but it's a lot of fun. So like retail, obviously public safety, casinos, federal government, and just about everything else. Businesses, I mean, I like to discover, if they're using DMR, NXDN, stuff like that. But yeah, just about anything's a target for me, especially because I don't have that much to listen to in this area. So I'll listen to anything.
Yeah. Well, when you live out in the middle of nowhere, you got to make your own, make your own listening.
Exactly. Yeah. So, it's fun when I travel though, because I do, we like to travel, and we go into another area or whatever. And I've got lists, up the wazoo. I've got actually a Radio Shack Pro 197 that I have programmed just for travel purposes. It's programmed for those areas we frequent, and that goes with us. Or I have the envelopes on the PSR 500, and just kind of listen to those areas that we go to on a regular basis. And those areas are always evolving, changing, and just trying to keep up with that. So when you go in there, you don't have to sit there and want to spend about a week program. Okay, it's time to leave, So just to kind of keep an ear on things.
So it sounds like you're more of a GRE Whistler Radio Shack guy than a Uniden guy.
You picked up on that, didn't you?
I noticed that too.
Yeah, for the most part. But I do have a couple. There are some good aspects of some of the Bearcat scanners. I do have two. Actually, I have three of them, but I only have two online right now. Two BCT 15Xs. And the thing I use those for is for fire tone out.
Yeah.
And the two of them together are all I need to monitor our entire county. I have 18 tones in there, and that includes all the ambulances, all the fire departments, and also all the storm sirens. So between 18 tones covers the entire county between those two radios. And obviously you can only put 10 in each one, and that's all they do. They just sit there and monitor the tone outs.
Yeah.
And they're great.
Cheap enough where you can afford to invest in a radio like that for that purpose.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I did. And I picked up another one, and that's actually going to be some point set up where it'll just be set up for local stuff. And I think they're good for that too. I mean, obviously I can't put the P25 statewide system in there because it's analog only, but it'll certainly give me some additional coverage.
So what is out of the Radio Shack, Whistler, GRE stable, which is your favorite?
I knew you were going to ask that. You have a tendency to do that. I tell you, I do have a couple that I really like. Because I'm in a primarily an analog area, I don't need much digital other than for the state system. So on a daily basis, the Pro 197 works great for me, which is also the GRE PSR 600. I bought a whole bunch of them when Radio Shack blew them out a long time ago, and they handle most of my daily activities for that. Like I said, I have one of them just programmed for travel purposes. I just load that into the tub that all the radio gear goes in for a trip, and that takes care of that. The PSR 500 is a great handheld and covers everything except the digital stuff, which if I'm monitoring retail, it's perfect for that. It's absolutely perfect. And if I need any deviation from that, then the TRX1 or TRX2, they certainly help with that. So yeah, I mean, they're the primary radios that I like to use on a day in and day out and travel basis. I have an AOR ARDV1, and I bought that back when the no scanners could handle DMR yet. Right. And we had a lot of activity started going in over in Iowa on DMR, and I thought I really need something to be able to decode that. So I picked up the ARDV1, and it's nice because it does other modes as well. I mean, does NXDN, at least the one mode, and it also
D-Star.
Yeah, D-Star. It does Fusion. Not that I have any of that around here. I mean, but it even does Tetra, which I don't have anything around here. The closest to me would be up in Minnesota, the refinery south of the Twin Cities. I'd love to go take it up there and try and listen to that sometime. But and that usually sets on a single frequency I want to monitor. I rarely use the HF end of it. I do if I get bored, but for the most part, it's sitting on a particular frequency. I just picked up an ICOM R8600. And I got that for one reason, the waterfall display. I think that's going to be fun to search out stuff. Yeah.
I'm trying to convince my honey to let me spend some money on that. She's not going to let me.
Well, I think she's let you spend plenty of money.
Oh yeah, I mean, it sounds like I don't have enough toys already, which is exactly what she's told me.
Yeah,
I agree with her. I definitely agree with her. You've got enough of toys.
Yeah, and it's mainly it's going to be used as a tool. I mean, actually, I understand it has a good scan rate on it. Yeah. So that's not an issue. But I really want to use it to be able to set 2 points in there, and anytime a frequency comes up between those 2 points, literally all I have to do is touch a display and boom, I'm listening to it. You can't beat that. Just monitor a wide swath of frequencies, and boom, it comes up. You can listen to it right away. So, and that's going to take me a while to really get into that. It's sitting in a box right now. It just came the other day, and it's going to take me a while before I can find the time to learn it. To where it's actually well used. So. Yeah,
there's a bit of a learning curve on that type of a radio.
Absolutely.
So, what do you think of, like Rich and I, you've experienced a lot of changes in this hobby, like a lot. I mean, we went from analog conventional to trunking to digital trunking, and the radios changed too, where you had, like a 4-channel radio, and then you had, 100 channels, and then it was 25,000 channels. Right. You've also had advancements in programming where you're programming either by crystal or by the keypad, and now with the computer, and now you have import capability of radio reference. What do you think of how this hobby has evolved in this period of time?
Well, the thing is, I think it's still evolving, obviously, and encryption is going to play a key role in that, I think, and we can't argue with that. That is going to be really a determining factor of how the hobby moves forward. But on the same hand, it's how us as hobbyists adapt to that. And the one thing I constantly want to, or I constantly tell our readers in the magazine, is that you have to adapt. And so your scanners may not be able to pick up your local PD on the big statewide trunk system because now everything's encrypted. But you can still hear stuff in town. You can listen to the school buses. When the weather's bad, they're a great one to listen to because they're going to be stuck in the snow somewhere. They're going to be calling in. There's so many different things you can listen to that will still be analog, or even if they're digital, they won't be encrypted. So it's how we adapt and what we can use from what we hear to enhance our knowledge of what's going on out there. I think that's going to be a real key. But no, yeah, I mean, I've seen it develop from tunable receivers to crystals, from 4 channels. I remember installing a 20-channel crystal Regency scanner in the newsroom where I worked. And then
you probably spent more money on crystals than you did on the radio.
I still got crystals. I don't know, one of these days, somebody's going to want one. I've got it, It's one of those deals. But no, I mean, from that, we came out with the first synthesized scanners, and they were a ball of fun. And because you could discover stuff. And now, I remember when I bought my first EDAX scanner, the Bearcat 895, I think, because I lived in a community that had an EDAX system. And that was the only way I was going to listen to them. I was locking out the data channel every night or whatever. Or no, that wasn't EDAX. That was, it had EDAX capability, but it was actually a regular analog trunk system. But you had to lock out the control channel every night. And that could be a real hassle. I mean, that's what we actually did in the newsroom. I just taught people how to lock in and lock out. Lock out the channel. You got to go back and lock back in or unlock the channel that was the data channel. But moving from that, and then the digital stuff started coming. Who knows? I mean, I think things are also going to change in the delivery of communications as well. We're going to be moving forward on things like FirstNet. People don't talk about that too much scanning wise, but a lot of communications are going to move to 5G systems. And there's just no way you can monitor that stuff. Gone are the days when you could clip a diode in your scanner and tune in 30 kilohertz steps, the cellular channels. Well, you can't do that with today's systems. Number one, they're blocked. Number two, it's a whole different type of modulation, so you're not going to go anywhere with that.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a migration to 5G systems. There's going to be more data that's out there, I think, than voice communications at some point. And it's always been moving that direction. From the old original data terminals in patrol cars or whatever, and fire trucks, and that's the data that's pushed through those systems keeps getting more intense, I think, where now you can pull up a floor plan. If a fire department rolls in on a fire call at a hotel, they can bring up a floor plan and know exactly what's where in the hotel, where the standoff pipes are, all that kind of stuff. So but us as scanner listeners, we're not going to know that. So it's going to be constantly evolving, but there's always going to be a need for basic communication that small town departments are going to use, like where I live. It's going to be for the business. It's going to be for the store that just wants to have a couple walkie-talkies and some of their employees in the store. It's just how we adapt, really.
Totally.
You want to talk about the magazine a little bit?
Yeah. Tell us about National Communications.
Yeah, it's been around for a while. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it's been around longer than any of the hobby radio publications of the past, even at this point. It got its start back in 1988, and Norm Shrine started. He lives in the Dayton, Ohio area, and he started a newsletter back then, and it was called The Radiogram. It was a 4-page newsletter, and get a kick out of this. One of the articles in that first issue talked about how Fox Marketing was leaving the scanner radio business. You remember those Fox scanners?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They were kind of cool. They're kind of different. And they exited, obviously, in 1988. So then there wasn't any issues again until 1990, the fall of 1990, when the Bearcat Radio Club came out as a similar newsletter. And then actually, I think it was just the next issue after that, Scanning Confidential began, and that had a few more pages in it, and it was a little bit longer and more information. And then in the next year, in the spring, National Scanning Report started. And actually, it's those of you who've been around for a while may remember Larry Miller. He had a publication. It was a shortwave publication primarily at the time. I can't remember what it was. But he actually came on board with Norm and produced the magazine for Norm, and he served as editor. Excuse me. And then there's been some changes through the title of the publication through the years. I mean, it became National Scanning after that, and then we've had some names some of you folks may recall who have been in the hobby somewhat long, who've had some activity with the magazine in the past. Jim Sutton was the editor back in, I think, the end of 1995. And another name, Joe Nooney, became editor in 1996. And then in 1997, Norm came back with a new title for the magazine called National Communications. And then I think it was about 2 years later, about 98 or so, Larry Miller was gone from the publication, and Norm was running it on his own at that point. I started with the magazine in 1996 writing for him. I previously had written for a number of publications. I mean, I go back a ways. Go back to the RCMA, the Radio Communications Monitoring Association. Mm-hmm. That was the deal back in the day, back in the 1980s.
Yeah, IL 370.
Yeah. I was PA 005. Big low number back then. Mm-hmm. I don't even know what year I first joined, but I actually became the editor of that at one point. And I had gone out to a couple of ANARC conventions. ANARC was the Associated North American Radio Clubs, mm-hmm. and they had annual conventions. RCMA was a member of that, and went out one year to was is at UC Fullerton in California, and got to meet a lot of the founding fathers of RCMA out there, and even visit them with them in their homes and stuff. And it was a great time. I really got to know some of the guys. And a couple of years later, wound up becoming the editor of that publication when Iden Rogers stepped aside, and did that for a couple of years. And then opportunity, I about 1982, 83, I think, because Rich Barnett actually started out as the first scanner editor for Popular Communications when it started in 1982. And I think Rich did maybe a half dozen columns for him or so when Tommy Nightel approached me about doing the scanner column. So I did that from like late 82 or 83 until I was actually named the editor of Popular Communications in 1995 and 1996. It was just a short term there. The company had too many editors at the time, so some of us got let go, and so I moved on to greater and better things. So I started writing for National Communications in 1996, which is fun, and it was a good opportunity. And from 1996 until 2014, I just wrote monthly columns, or every other month, actually, because National Communications comes out every other month. So I did the scanning column and did the CB column as well in later years, writing for them. But in 2014, Norm decided, time to retire. And he didn't want to see the magazine die. He had approached some people about taking it over, and they weren't interested in doing it. So he approached me, and it was a good timing for me. I was working remote a couple days a week from home, and had to travel out of town. And I thought, well, this would be a great opportunity. So I'm not only living somewhere else in the middle of the week and trying to start up my side of National Communications, because I had to literally restart everything from the ground up. The layout was done by somebody else, but as a newspaper designer, I had no trouble designing this thing. So I completely redesigned it and got the first issue under my command was the July-August issue of 2014. So I've been the editor and publisher of it and owner of it after Norm retired. Coming on seven years this year? Yeah. 7 years, yeah. So it's been a fun ride. We have great readers. We do a lot of different things in the magazine, but I've also narrowed the focus. One of the things, obviously, scanning is a very important part of National Communications magazine, and there's always at least one or two. There's always at least a column in there, and usually a feature as well. We also cover the personal radio services, so we do have I continue the CB radio column in there. There's still a number of people who are interested in that, and CB is actually kind of having some kind of a little resurgence, and it's kind of interesting watching it. It happened back in the 1990s, back about the mid-90s, and actually I was involved with a project with CQ magazine back then. They custom printed a publication for Radio Shack stores called Radio with an exclamation mark, and the only way you could get that magazine was to go to Radio Shack stores and purchase it. And I think it came out either every other month or quarter. I think it was quarterly, and it was mainly filling that need because CB was resurging. Scanners were picking up again as well as a result of that even. So, but it didn't last long. It lasted a couple years, and that was it. So it seems once again, CB is picking up again. Maybe it's the sunspot cycle 25 coming into play here, where there'll be a lot more activity on CB. For at least the skip is legal now. 2017 it was legalized. You can talk more than 155 miles, so that may be part of it. I don't know, but but we have that. We covered GMRS. I think GMRS actually passed a milestone this past month. Actually, less than a week ago, or about a week ago, there are now 100,000 GMRS licensees in the United States. That's just mind-boggling. People actually get licensed and using systems. That repeaters are popping up left and right. I mean, I've got one here for folks in town to use. GMRS is really doing great, and so we obviously have to have a focus on that. I think in the magazine, MERS, it's kind of there. So we cover MERS and FRS, but they're there for radio hobbyists, so we cover that. But they're not exactly a growth thing right now. It's hard to find MERS radios for the most part. There's some imports that are coming into the market right now, but for the most part, we do cover those. So, but we have some things on tap for the next issue, recognizing that GMRS is in a growth spurt right now. We're now going to have a regular GMRS column in the magazine. So I think that's a good thing. I think that'll cater to those who are really interested in GMRS. There are interconnected GMRS systems now where you can talk from one side of the country to the other through an internet connection.
Yeah.
For us, it's really cool. So you may be listening to your local GMRS repeater, and you may hear guys half a country away talking on it. So it's kind of cool what's going on with that. It's definitely having a resurgence and a lot of activity on GMRS these days. We're also going to do something kind of different. We're going to be adding an amateur radio column. I firmly believe that the amateur radio magazines out there are doing a good job, except in one area. They're not catering to the basic amateur radio operator. They are catering to those who have taken it to another level. But there's a lot of new licensees today who they just want to be able to use the radio. They have a Baofeng UV5R, and they want to be able to talk on it.
Yeah.
And we've learned this a lot. My day job is working with ham radio prep, and I'm the general manager of that. And we teach people through our online courses how to get licensed for the technician, general, and extra exams. And the one thing I've seen left and right is there's not enough information out there for the basic amateur who just wants to talk on the radio. They don't care about the inside of the radio. They want to know how to talk on it. Real basic stuff. And I think there's going to be, I hope that takes off. We have a couple amateur advertisers in the magazine now. We have a new one coming on board this issue. We already have another one in there. So I will not make the magazine an amateur radio magazine. I will not. But I think it's a good key element. The other end of it, too, is there are some states where if you have an amateur radio license, you can use a scanner in your vehicle, like Minnesota. Yeah. So yeah. I think that's a good thing. If you want to use a scanner in your car in Minnesota, get an amateur license. Otherwise, you have to get a permit from the state up there, and that permit, you have to literally specify every frequency you're going to monitor. That was back in the Crystal days, but you get caught with a scanner up there, and oh, wait a second, you got this channel in here. You're not allowed to listen to that according to your permit. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah. And I spent 4 hours in the office in St. Paul trying to get my permit approved, and they finally got it approved for non-law enforcement frequencies only.
Yeah, and we used to have to get, when I worked in the media in Minnesota, we had to get our photographers those permits. But literally the card was big enough you could maybe get 8 frequencies on there. It's like, okay, well, we'll pick them. Make sure we get the right ones on there. But man, if you screw up, you put an input instead of an output, you're screwed. Yeah. But no, so
well, tell us how help somebody would get a hold of the magazine.
Well, we do have a website, natcommag.com. But the greatest thing is Scannermaster now sells a magazine, and we certainly invite folks to go to scannermaster.com and I believe click on electronic publications or books, something like that, and you'll be able to find how to subscribe there. We have an additional product that we came out about a year or two ago. I call it the library DVD for National Communications, and we have all the back issues of the magazine on there, usually about a year back from the current issues. So the current DVD version doesn't have 2020 on there yet, but it has from 1988 to 2019. Now, come July, we'll add 2020 to it, but there you can get all the back issues on there, and the price is great. I mean, it's cheaper than most of the similar library DVDs for other publications out there. But it's one of the things we've been doing in the past is if you have we call it an online access account. And that online access account gives you access to the current issue of the magazine, as well as all back issues of the magazine. It's in PDF format, by the way, to make sure that's clear.
Yeah.
So with that, we're going to get away from that because it's just getting unwieldy. The website's old, it's archaic, and I just need to freshen it up. So we did want to make the DVD available to those who want those back issues, but at some point you won't be able to download those back issues. We're moving forward with that. But it's the magazine's still growing. Like I said, we're adding a couple columns in the issue that comes out the beginning of May, and the readership is up. I've been happy with that, and we just keep plugging away at it.
Cool.
Have you seen, in your point of view, a spike in the scanning hobby since we've been dealing with staying at home a lot more with the COVID restrictions?
Yeah, we did. We actually did. The other thing, and this may sound crazy, but I think the other thing that's kind of driven up people buying, I can't call them subscriptions, we call them online access accounts. People buying that because stimulus money. Yeah. What are you going to spend it on? You can spend it on radios, anything related to radios, of course, unless you have to put it towards necessary things. So it definitely has spiked things. And I think they're in the early days of COVID, back March, April, May last year, people were sitting at home and they were firing up those scanners. People were going out in the garage, pulling them off the shelves, out of the basement. And the same thing with CB radio. They're finding the CB radios on the garage shelf and say, well, let's see if this thing works. And so I think it did spike both of those for quite a while. And I think there still is some growth in that. We've been trying to promote the magazine a little more in the last couple of years as well, and striking some relationships with others. And I think that's worked as well too. So, but I think there has been a little bit of spike in the past year, especially with COVID, because people are home. They don't know what's going on in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Absolutely. And how long has it been PDF only? When's the last time you guys did a printed version?
Yeah, that's a good question. We switched to the last printed copy was the November-December issue in 2012. And the PDF version started with the January-February 2013 issue. I remember Norm approaching me about it back then and wondering about, do you think people would have a problem with that? And I said, no, I don't think so. But you know what? If we hadn't have done that back then, I don't think we'd be in business now. Like a lot of publications have died, not just radio publications, but newspapers and everything else. And if you don't adapt and make that change, the printing costs kept getting higher and higher. Paper and newsprint keep going up in cost. Postage costs, forget it. I mean, it's just ridiculous what you have to pay to mail something these days.
Yeah, and then you got the lead time too.
Exactly. I mean, literally, I can make a change to the publication literally up to the moment I post something online. And believe me, I've caught a typo or just crap. Now I got to re-PDF this thing again and, get it on there. So, but so it definitely makes it, we have more fresher news in there. Something happens the later part of the month right before publication, I'll go with it. I remember when the GMRS rules broke back in September 2017. And I said, you know what, this has to be in here. So I went up 4 pages in the back of the magazine and included the text and an analysis of the changes that for both CB and GMRS, because both of them had some change at the time. Right. The legal skip change came about for CB. And we had that, and if we were a printed publication, people wouldn't have had that until like the November issues. So, it definitely was. Or no, we did have for no. I can't remember exactly, but we were able to be timely with that and have that information. And same thing, we have a news column in each issue of the magazine. And if something comes across my desk at the last minute and it's really important, we're going to get it in there.
Sure.
I mean, I've worked in the news business. I know the importance of news. That's just what you do.
Yeah, that does make it. Yeah, the immediacy, the ability to get it out there right now is huge. I mean, I was doing newsletters, which is nothing close to what you're doing now. But
sure.
It's we talk about by the time you get it, typeset and off to the printer, it's already obsolete.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's very much like the frequency directories now. I mean, Scanner Master stopped creating it because it just, by the time it goes to press, it's already out of date.
Absolutely.
And the thing that I noticed, tonight, our backgrounds and many of the guests that have been on the show have a connection to the hobby personally and professionally. For myself, I worked way back in the broadcast days. I worked, as a traffic information manager, used scanners there. Rich, you worked in law and fire, so you were on both sides of the radio on the scanner.
And on both sides of the microphone.
Yes. And then Chuck, you worked in the media as well.
Yeah, I worked in the media, but I've also been in the public safety sector as well. In high school and college, I ran with the rescue squad. I've been involved with emergency management through the years in different jurisdictions as well. And currently am the communications officer of our county sheriff's search and rescue team. So, I mean, I've built up a system for us there that is a really great system for us out in the field. But we're going to take it a step further. I think it's hard to find all this stuff to pull together, but we want to go to DMR and we want to be able to track our units by GPS over the DMR radios in the field and have them come up on a big monitor inside our communications trailer. So, I mean, that's a big project. I don't know why I find time to do this stuff, but it's just, but no, so I've had the opportunity both through the news media and through the public safety sector as well. Absolutely.
You want to give a breakdown of the pricing of the magazine?
Sure. The pricing is pretty simple. 1 year, which is 6 issues, is $25, and we give a little bit of a discount for 2 years at $48. We also can bundle that with the library DVD, and that library DVD by itself, if you want to buy it just itself, it's $59, and some people do that. If you want to bundle it with a 1 year subscription or a 1 year online access account, that is $79. So you're basically getting that access account for $20 for 1 year instead of $25. And then for 2 years with the DVD is $99.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's all available through Scanner Master right there. You can purchase any of those packages right there.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. I mean, the last time I picked up a magazine, Trains Magazine, for example, Rich, what is it, like $7 or whatever it is?
Yeah, it's like $7 or $8, and it's getting thinner and thinner.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is, $25, let's say $25, for a year. I mean...
Yeah. And we have not raised that price. I have not raised the price since I've taken over it. And I tell you, one of the good things about going to PDF only is we eliminated a lot of our costs that we had with postage and printing. I eliminated some costs like layout. I do it myself instead of farming it out. So all the designs on me. And even some of the writing. I mean, I've taken on more writing with the magazine as well. So we're able to keep it at that price for a good reason. I can't even tell you the last time that I only remember it being $25. It may have been $20 or $20. People used to get the coupons in their Uniden boxes, scanners. And we offered it $21 there. And that just stopped probably about in the last year or so. Unless there's every once in a while we get one because, there's new old stock somewhere and say, oh, wow. It's funny because we had those coupons in Radio Shack boxes, Cobra boxes, a bunch of different ones. And it's funny, I get the Radio Shack one every once in a while, and that thing's probably about 15 plus years old. They think they're going to get frequency lists and print a magazine down. I hate to tell them that it's log on.
I get 2 or 3 calls a week asking for the police scanner toolkit, which hasn't been done in 7-8 years.
Yeah, I mean, it just was a part of a thing that Rich put together. It's
the same kind of deal.
You probably get people who call up and want to get a copy of the current issue of Police Call too.
Yeah. Sure
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I get inquiries like that. Like, I hate to tell you this, but go online.
Well, there are still people out there who don't have computers and they don't have any access to the internet. And we used to tell them, you can go to the library and get them, but now they can't go to the library. So, until COVID is over. And you feel bad for them. But then again, it's, this is 2021, right?
Yeah. Definitely got to be current.
Yeah, absolutely. So the only paper shortage we have these days is toilet paper versus.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's going to be coming on again too, from what I hear.
Yeah. Well, I'm stocked.
Yeah, likewise.
I got all those old copies of Police Call I can just wrinkle up.
There you go. That's copyright size.
This hopefully the frequencies don't transfer.
Yeah. I'll have to bleach the ink out of them first. Oh, jeez. So, Chuck, are you active on the handbands at all?
I wouldn't say I'm active, but I obviously I still am on the handbands. My involvement, I think. Well, I should probably preface it. I do have a 440 repeater at my house here, and so I obviously keep an ear on that. I am also very into DMR. And with a little hotspot, see, there's no DMR repeaters near me because I'm in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So, not to be confused with Nowhere, Illinois, which actually is a place.
Right.
But no, I have a DMR hotspot. I actually have a couple of DMR hotspots. So, so I get on DMR, and it's kind of cool because I can talk anywhere in the world with a less than a half watt UHF handheld. On DMR through an internet connection. So there are purists who say that's not really ham radio, but if there's RF on either end, it's still ham radio in my book. But I was actually an active HF contester when I lived in Minnesota. There's an active contest group up there, and I had a ball with it. I used to have fun working the contests and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I keep an ear on 2 meter stuff around here. I have the only repeater in the county here, so I mean, not a whole lot for me to listen to when I go out mobile. Even I mean, I might pick up some of the surrounding counties.
Of course, you're probably the only ham in the county.
No, I'm not actually. We actually have just a handful here in the county, but no, I mean it's I try and be active. I'd probably be more active in a bigger area, absolutely. But I'm always looking to do different things with ham radio. I've actually got, I don't know what I even use. I got some 900 and 1.2 gig stuff coming that I think will be fun going to a metro area where there's actually repeaters on those frequencies to kind of have fun with that. But yeah, I mean, I like to still dabble with it and play around different areas. Picked up some P25 handhelds and want to try and work with that on some amateur frequencies as well. So that's one of the great things about ham radio is you can use a lot of commercial gear. And I have a preference for commercial gear rather than amateur gear. It's just a lot of different things you can do with that stuff.
Oops. It looks like I lost Rich.
There
he is.
I'm back.
Switch positions on us.
Yeah, no, I hit the wrong button on the computer here. That was my fault. So.
I was wondering what happened there.
There you go.
I just got sick of listening. So.
No. But yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. I'm happy that, I got involved in this hobby as a kid and been in it ever since. I mean, this seems like the common thread with most of the people that we talk to is just getting involved in it when you're young, and then it just stays with you, through your whole life. Sometimes it becomes a part of your career, so it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, you go through school and guidance counselors ask you what you want to do, and I'm back in junior high school. Well, I want to manage a Radio Shack store. Okay, it's probably not the best career move in the world, so I didn't do that. But I went into the news business. I'm not sure that's a great idea these days. I'm glad I got out of it. It's kind of a dying industry, but now I'm in the ham radio business. So and it's a lot of fun, and seeing people get licensed every day is just a real hoot. And just feels so good to see people who have tried for years to get their ham license and move forward on that. Amateur radio is certainly a good activity to enjoy with scanning. I mean, no question about it. I've been a licensed amateur since 1982. One of the photographers, newspaper I worked at, I used to hang out with him, and he said, "You're going to get your license." Okay. Well, so he gave me the novice exam. Okay. Well, I passed that. And then I went and studied under a tree with a Dick Bash book back in those days, and studied for the technician exam. And back in those days, you had to go to the FCC office to take your test. And went to the Philadelphia FCC office about a month later and got my tech license then. And because I was not necessarily grandfather tech, but I had a technician license issued prior to 1987, I was able to automatically upgrade that to the general back when I was living in Minnesota. And I'm working on my extra now. So, you kind of keep at it all the time with ham radio. Things change and modes change. And, back when I got involved with ham radio, there weren't things like FT8 and all that kind of fun stuff on HF, but now there is. So, yeah. And again, listening to amateur activity from space on your scanner. I don't use a ham equipment to listen 145.8. No, it's my scanner it's going to pick up if I've got an orbit going overboard.
Oh, yeah.
430, 435 or whatever. So,
yeah. I remember the first time I heard that, that is just so cool.
Well, yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because, I remember back, I was living in New Jersey at the time, and I was working nights on the night desk for the paper. And one morning I got woken up. I left my Regency M100 on when I was sleeping. And all of a sudden I heard come across, I think it was 145.8 back then. Owen Garriott, W5LFL, calling out for a CQ from space. It's like, wow, that's really cool. And I remember getting I didn't have any real antenna to talk to him on it, but, I logged him a couple of times and got a QSL out of it. Now I've worked the space shuttle from my car twice, and just driving down the road. One time was in Minnesota, one time was in Iowa, and I just happened to get through the pileup, and it's so cool to talk to the shuttle. I mean,
cool. Yeah. That's something you'll never forget.
No.
Even just hearing them, I've never worked them, just hearing them. It was just like, this is just so cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now they've got, the transponders on there. You can hear guys working the world from this shuttle passing overhead. So, and again, that's the linkage with scanners more than anything. Yeah.
Cool.
For sure. So we were just excited to have you on the show, and it's just really awesome to be able to. We've had several interviews, and it's just every one of these have been great. I mean, everybody's got their different perspective of the hobby, and then it seems like always encryption comes up, and
sure.
That seems like a hot button of discussion. Other than encryption, where do you see the hobby going to in the a lot of people are saying, there's going to be more encryption. There may be not, transparency. But as for the hobby scanner wise with features and so on, what would you like to see in a new scanner?
I think the biggest thing that's going to have to happen in order to attract people into the hobby, or even being able to want to have a scanner, is they need to be simplified. And they really need to be they're difficult for somebody new to operate. You need probably even better than zip code programming. You need maybe even it has to be somehow that the person can operate it and understand what they're doing. Back in the old days, we could do that. You punch in a frequency, boom, there it is, and you scan those 30 channels or whatever. And I think that it's going that way. I mean, I remember when things started to go that direction and have continued, but it's got to go further, I think, to make it easier for the person who lives in a neighborhood and just wants to hear the police in the neighborhood. They don't need to hear everything in the city that's going on. They just want to hear the precinct in their area that they live in, and be able to simplify that somehow. And maybe it's an internet connection to their radio that somebody can log into it and provide them with what they want and make it easier. Or there's a Wi-Fi connection on that scanner or something. I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that will be changing if the industry is going to adapt to what those want. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be a market for high-end scanners like the 100 and the 200 from Uniden, but there's also a market for low-end scanners, and be able to receive digital talk groups on a basic scanner. There actually, I read something somewhere recently. There's some, I can't remember who's making it, but there's a box somebody's selling, and it's got Bluetooth connection, and it seems like it's a lot simpler to operate. And if he's successful with that and markets it, and might put a little ding in some of the manufacturers. So I think any way we can make that easier for entry level, I think is going to be the biggest thing to keep the industry from dying.
Yeah, we've talked about on the show, somebody just needs to create something with one of those Raspberry Pis. Absolutely. You know, something that's pretty simple and straightforward. I mean, you look at an SDS 100 and 200, it's basically a software-defined radio. And, you know, somebody comes up with, you know, something in a Raspberry Pi and, you know, writes the software and makes it simple by, you know, however way possible. It's amazing to see where we've came from, you know, in the hobby, you know, just from from a simple scanner. I mean, Rich and I are the biggest cheerleaders for the 125 AT, which, which you look at the 125 AT, it's the ultimate transportation scanner. For what it does is it crosses over into other hobbies. You know, somebody that may be a rail fan uses the 125 AT for listening to the trains, and they couldn't be bothered with public safety or all that other business. They use it as a tool to assist them with their hobby. The same thing with the aviation as well. I mean, Rich does a lot of aviation watching and monitoring, and, you know, he'll have his 125 AT with him, and he's just scanning those frequencies. I mean, and it's interesting that, you know, there's offsets or, you know, to our hobby. You know, like some people use it as a tool versus as the primary thing of the hobby.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, I agree with the 125 AT. I don't own one, but my son does, and he loves plane spotting, and it's perfect for him.
Yeah.
It's a perfect scanner for that.
Yeah. I mean, and like you said, it's not a very, you know, like you need a reasonable price scanner, and for the hobby, for aviation or rail, a lot of times you end up buying a decent camera and you're spending a bulk of your money in the photography or video aspect of it, or if you're doing a drone for rail fanning, you're spending a lot of coin there. Yeah. You don't want to spend, you know, $600 to $700 on then a scanner. I mean, when you could get a scanner for $130.
Exactly. Yeah, we do that a lot, you know, on the phone. People will call up and they want to get an SDS 100 for rail fanning, and often as not, we talk them out of that, you know. So, yeah, and get that 125 because it is such an ideal scanner. Yeah. I hope Rich isn't listening.
Gordon, yeah. Gordon, we promote it so much you can't even get one. I mean, we've talked about it so much. I mean, you know, Bearcat Joe keeps insisting, you know, it's not being discontinued. Yeah, because we keep talking about it. Probably their sales are going up.
Yeah.
But it is a great utility scanner. I mean, it's great for rail fanning. It's great for aviation monitoring. You know, even Milcom stuff. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love it. You know, it's my go-to scanner, and I will never get rid of it. You have to pry it out of my dead cold fingers.
But yeah, I guess what we can do now is do some questions. What I'm going to do is just do a couple of slides here, just promoting what's coming up on the show. In case you're just joining us, we're having a live interview. And we want to tell you about next week's show. We're going to be talking about scanning the forestry services. We're going to talk about that next week during the broadcast, which will be Wednesday, April the 28th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. If you have a smart television or Roku or Apple TV, download the app, the YouTube app, and you can watch us on your TV. As always, the Scanner Guys are brought to you by Scanner Master, and it helps if I click on the right screen. And Scanner Master is our sponsor. Since 1978, the nation's most experienced dealer of all brands of new police scanners, software, accessories, and programming. Shop them online or call the experts at 1-800-722-6637. They're open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Check them out online at scannermaster.com, and you can definitely buy Chuck's digital magazine, the National Communications Magazine, right off the website. So definitely check out Scanner Master there. If you have any technical questions about, getting a scanner, or technical question about a scanner you have, email support at scannermaster.com. And you can check out their social media as well on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So all good stuff right there. And let's, get the mouse in the right spot. There we go. So we'll go into a little bit of questions from our audience.
So we had a lot of check-ins tonight. So hello to each and every one of you. We do read each and every comment. So we appreciate all that. Les reminds us he's in the Toronto area, the greater Toronto area. And the only store they have up there that even sells scanners is a place called Radio World. But it's more of a ham radio place than than anything else. So they don't know anything about scanners there. There used to be a store in, I'm not sure if it was Burlington or if it was one of those other towns out there, called Lakeshore Electronics. It was on Lakeshore Drive, Highway 2 in Burlington, Ontario. And back in the day, it was an awesome, awesome scanner store. Obviously, they're long gone, like most other scanner stores. Physical scanner stores are all gone, but Lakeshore Electronics was awesome, and I spent a lot of time up there. I spent a lot of time in the Burlington area. We have a couple people that also love to listen to casinos, so you're not alone on that, Chuck.
Exactly.
I mean, it's quite interesting now with the casinos switching over to trunk systems. It gives them the ability to have more channels. So, it's great to run your scanner in the search mode or discovery mode to find more talk groups. Because a lot of times, what you see on Radio Reference is not the whole list.
No, you'll. I mean, it may show security and maybe housekeeping, but you're not going to hear like food service maybe that only use it maybe 1 or 2 times a day, to check on, make sure the buffet's stocked, stuff like that. Real important stuff.
Oh, yeah. You'd be surprised at how much good information you're going to get. I always have all my trunk systems set on ID search, and I lock out the stuff that I've confirmed, and it's a great way to find new activity.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even talk about that tonight, just the hunt for new frequencies. I mean, that's still, I remember I did a lot of that when I was a kid. The bus company for the town would change contracts, and of course, it was different buses, different radios. So every beginning of the school year, I'm searching, the band until I can hear them chit-chatting on the radio, and I recognize some of the familiar voices, and then there it was.
Yeah, I remember doing that in the 7th grade. It was the best 4 years of my life.
One of the things I like about the Pro 197 and the PSR 500 is that I can set up an object in there, and it's always searching different band segments for me. So in addition to scanning all the frequencies I have programmed in there, it is also scanning, say, like 162 to 174. So if I've got some Fed activity, boom, it's going to show up there. So, just different segments like that, even like retail, like my the 500 that I have set up for retail scanning. One of them scanned like 451 to 453. And, if somebody's using some low power handhelds, boom, it's going to be there. So it's a nice little way of finding frequencies without actually having to make it a labor.
Exactly. Yeah, make it easy to find.
Yep.
So a couple more people mentioned that they like listening to casinos, and Nate mentioned that he found a lot of surprising amount of the commercial stuff that's not licensed. So I would venture to say, we were talking earlier about going to the mall and listening to the stuff in the mall. Probably 99% of the stuff there is unlicensed. They're either using a service like FRS, which you don't need a license for, or they're using low-power VHF and UHF business channels, which, you're supposed to have a license on them, but nobody does.
And it's funny, too, because it may be, again, it may be operating on a national license for the chain, but it's funny because the chain may actually have a different corporate name. So you're not going to find it under Charlotte Russe, for instance. It's going to be under a different name on their license. So unless you know that relationship, it's going to be hard to kind of pair it up with
it's going to be JMA Holdings or something like that. That has absolutely nothing to do with that. So
exactly.
Conglomerates. There's like 7 companies that own up 90% of the retail stores these days
anymore. It seems,
local Costco's are great to listen to. Yeah, they are. Sam's Club, Costco, those big box stores.
Some of those are switching over to those 900 megahertz handhelds, and I know some of the Karma guys have gotten close in, and they buy the actual Motorola 900 megahertz radios. And the thing is the Costco's, they don't reprogram them. So any of the channels they use are the channels already programmed in there, and they can find them. I mean, you can change them, but it's easy to find them. But you have to buy one of those radios to decode the modulation and everything. Yeah,
absolutely. And Les even mentioned the Lakeshore scanners. Yeah, Lakeshore electronics that I talked about earlier. I didn't even see that. So Les and I are on the same page when it comes to the Greater Toronto area scanner stores back in the 70s and 80s.
Sure. Carter had a question in there I can probably answer for him.
Yeah, go ahead.
He says, I'm curious if I'm still in contact with other PopCom writers like Harold Ort, Jock Elliott, or Alice Brannigan. And I'll chuckle a little bit, and then I'll answer the question. Unfortunately, Harold Ort, when he left the magazine, NCQ, he took a job. I mean, he was former military, and he took a job with the DEA and was a spokesman for the DEA in the New York metro area. But he died a couple years ago, actually. So sorry to report. His death pretty much went unnoticed. I happened to stumble across it. It's one of those deals that I found out like on deadline with the magazine. I said, I got to get it in there. I knew Harold, talked with him many times, and I've met him. Very unfortunate hearing about his death. It was very sudden, I believe. His obit was posted online, mentioned basically nothing. It was very private, I think. So, but no, Harold is definitely gone with us. Jock Elliott, I don't think I've heard from Jock since the days of PopCom. I don't know where he's at, whether he's still around or what. And Alice Brannigan. Okay, so.
Oh, I'm sure she probably died around the same time Tom Nightel did.
Yeah, see, I wasn't going to let the cat out of the bag, but now you did it. Now I've got to tell the story. It's true. Tommy, obviously I got to work pretty closely with Tommy when I was the editor of PopCom. And there's no secret, Tommy spun a lot of tales in the magazine and had a lot of different bylines. Alice Brannigan was one of them, and I don't think it's ever been actually said anywhere. People have assumed, they've guessed it's him. I can confirm it's him. Tommy was a great guy. I mean, he was an incredible. Had incredible knowledge of a lot of different things and just wrote prolifically left and right. I mean, he could fill the magazine with just his own writings each issue.
Oh, yeah.
Just an incredible person. But, yeah, he was Alice. The person on the cover of that issue that reported was Alice was not. It was just
a
stage photo.
Shannon Honeywell.
Yep, that was another one. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they all talked about broadcast stuff, and Tommy was into that stuff. So great guy, and not to slight anything, but it's true. Tommy was just an incredible writer, and he couldn't put his bio on and everything because if it had his name on everything, it's like, well, who else writes for that magazine?
Yeah. So. Yeah. I only actually met him once, and that was a long time ago. And he was a great guy. He was a very gregarious, a very personable, opinionated, outgoing kind of guy. And, he was a great guy. I thought he was a great guy to talk to, and he knew what he was doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. He had a lot of knowledge. His I can't remember what the relationship was, but I think it was an uncle or something. Was actually, if you look back at the old Popeye cartoons, his uncle was like one of the creators of it, the animators or something, and definitely, and there's something else with some military army manuals or something. I can't remember, but obviously a very interesting guy. Glad I got to know him and talk with him a lot. Really enjoyed the relationship I had with him, but one of those people who left a lot behind when he died.
Yeah, absolutely. We mentioned fire toneouts earlier. A couple of our readers love fire toneouts. I used to do that all the time. So that's why I ended up with so many of the BCT-15 scanners, is I was using them for fire toneout. Sure. And then when I came here, they didn't use toneouts, but they worked out great for military aviation. Dale is still saving and hoping for the AR-7400. Hope that doesn't turn out to be vaporware. That's got a lot of promise. And I know a couple of small airport operations here that would fit perfectly for them. So got the little airport out here out in Wickenburg. They have a Unicom channel. They've got the weather ASOS channel and 121.5, and that would be an ideal application for a 7400. There was a Canadian scanner guides was called Heritech. Ben Verman, I think was his name, or Bert Vernum. I remember I had those I was up in Canada several times. I had the Quebec one. I had the Ontario one. I think they had one for the Maritimes too, if I recall correctly. Chris asked if the U.S. is going to be kind of like the United Kingdom, where we can't hear the police and fire eventually. Hopefully that won't come to that, but if it does, it does. It just hope that maybe with all the stuff that's going on, they'll reconsider the encryption in favor of openness.
I think one of the things in the UK is that there's a lot of I shouldn't say a lot of. It's a nationwide system, if I'm not mistaken, and it runs on Tetra, and obviously they can encrypt Tetra. So that's really the reason. I mean, there's no real need for any other kind of systems because it's a nationwide system over there.
Right.
Yeah, so that kind of really dictates what they do across the board. Here, I've spoken to police chiefs, particularly one, that was not too far from Holliston, Massachusetts, when I was working out of the office there. And he said, I don't want to go encrypted. I have no plans to go encrypted. And I'm going to buy a scanner today, and I'm going to stream it out to Broadcastify because I want transparency in my department. I want my community to know what's going on in there and with their police department. So, the great thing, I think we hit the nail on the head, with the UK, with it being a national system. It's very easy for them to pass policy across the board with one paintbrush versus here. There's so many people that are involved in the decision making. It's not going to be one keystroke and it's done.
Right. So Les has also lets us know that the fire data terminals are down in the Toronto area. So that means there's going to be a lot more radio communications. And you get a lot of places where they use a computer for most of the dispatching, and half the traffic you hear on the scanner is, hey, my computer is down, or how do I do this on the computer? or if the whole system goes down, then everybody's got to use the radio again. Oh my God!
How do we do this again?
So Carmen said he used to look forward to PopCom every month. Chuck's scanner scene and Bill Sanders' CB scene. So those are real popular columns at the time. I remember reading those all the time when you wrote those.
Yeah, we had some great. I mean, just the same note, we had some great authors in popular communications. Through the years, and it was kind of a revolving door, depending on the different columns. But we had some good people who came on board for a given time. Some of them kind of hung on for a while, but it's definitely a lot of good talent that went through that magazine.
Oh yeah, and then Betty Bearcat. I remember Betty Bearcat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was like Betty Crocker. It really wasn't a person. It was an
icon at best.
An icon. Yeah,
Yes.
There you go. That's a great way of saying it. Yeah. So kind of like some of the other people we've talked about tonight. All righty. Yeah. Let's see here. And on the CD, Tim asked, is the CD searchable?
It's actually a DVD, not a CD. So the CD would not hold all the issues of America's hobby radio magazine. So we had to go to a DVD. So make sure you have a DVD drive if you purchase it. But it is not searchable. We do have on our website a list that goes from 1988 to about 2012 that has the articles just listed by title in there. Probably should include that on the DVD if I think about it at some point. But yeah, otherwise it's not searchable. It was too much of a hassle to try and do that on there.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, most people that I know have purchased it have literally sat there and put it in and just started reading through everything. It's a good activity, and with 6 issues per year rather than 12, it takes a little less time to go through. Yeah.
I suppose they could, if they get on the CD, they could copy and paste it into a text document and then search it that way.
Sure.
That's going to be more work than it's worth, probably.
Exactly.
We got some suggestions on making some easier to get ham licenses. So as we were talking about scanner stores in the past, the Scanner World in Albany, New York is gone. The last they were doing was selling some of their old stock on eBay, and then I think the owner died a year or 2 or 3 ago.
About a year ago, I think they were still selling stuff, but that's kind of dried up.
Yeah, probably just trying to get rid of all the junk from the warehouse.
Yeah.
Modern Times, that was another magazine of the time that, like PopCom, has been gone for some time, and again, it was a creature of its creator.
Absolutely.
Bob had his thumbprint all over Modern Times as much as Tom had his on PopCom.
Absolutely, and the two of them actually got along. As much as they were competitors, the two got along.
Yeah,
and they know what each other doing. They actually swapped ads between the two, promote their own magazines.
Sure.
I've even written for Modern Times. It's not like because I worked for PopCom, I shared the wealth.
Yeah. I've got a few bylines in both magazines, a couple more in Monitoring Times than I did in PopCom, but sure. They're both great magazines, and I read them cover to cover every month when they came out.
Absolutely.
Todd is working on some DMR DMR channels in his area for the power company. And I'm not sure, you're probably more familiar with DMR than I am. Can they use both slots or just one?
It depends on the way their system's set up. Typically, if you're talking slots, if you're talking a trunk system, or you're talking a conventional DMR system. On a conventional DMR system, you probably have both slots active. My experience in seeing some of the trunk systems is they typically have a tendency to stay on one slot because there's multiple channels in the system. But if they start loading up, then you may see the other slot pop up as well.
Cool. Well, and Joe agrees with that. Apparently, I didn't read far enough on. So, yep. So I always tell people that if you don't know, leave it so that you can hear it on both. So, Durham Radio, that was another one in the Toronto area, but they're gone. They had a couple stores around Canada, and I think, but they've been gone for a while. Let's see here. Carmen says he was sorry to hear about Harold. He's talked with them a few times. Tier 3 DMR is starting to get popular. Yeah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole to get into.
That's trunking, and basically your DMR Tier 1 is your what it amounts to like the PMR radios, or kind of like an equivalent of our FRS in European countries, and it's real basic DMR. It won't work with the other modes. Tier 2 is where you have conventional and repeaters, and you can have different time slots. Now, depending on how you set up your radios, there are different ways you can go about it. There's some cool things you can do with DMR that I've experimented with. You can do it's called DCDM, and it's dual channel, dual mode. Or no, I'm sure I have that wrong. Where literally you can transmit on DMR in one time slot on a conventional DMR channel, but that is not receivable by a scanner.
Yeah.
So you may have some of that activity in your area. It's very rare, but you would never even know they're there. Cool. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to do an entire show on DMR. We'll have to have Chuck back on that because he knows more about it.
Yeah, I know a little bit about it. Yeah, I've been playing with it. Yep.
Yeah. Don, our good friend Don, is in Bermuda, and he just ordered the subscription for the magazine. So.
Great. We needed a reader down there.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
And maybe you have a future contributor.
Exactly.
So the next comment from Nubs says he's in the June 73 issue of S9 magazine with a picture of his stuff in Niagara, Ontario. So if anybody has the June 73 issue of S9 magazine, that was a CB magazine back in the day, if I recall correctly.
Actually, CBN scanning. It was actually a good hobby radio publication. Tommy was the editor of that. He morphed from when S9 was put out of production by the owners at the time. That's when him and Dick Ross, a publisher, CQ, got together and created Popular Communications in 1982. But S9 was the publication back in the 60s and 70s, and covered all kinds of things. It covered CB, it covered scanning. Tommy used to run like experimental licenses in there.
Oh, yeah.
Just all kinds of lists and stuff. And it was a lot like Popcom, but it was in a smaller format magazine until later years where I think got bigger. And on the same note, there was CB magazine at one time too.
Yep.
At the same time, competed with S9, and it went through a couple editors. The last editor I think was CB magazine was Gordon West. Gordo was the editor for a while, and there's just been a bunch. And of course, you go back to the 1970s, and there were a ton of radio magazines back then because CB was going like gangbusters. There's millions of people getting on the air, and there are all these CB magazines, and a lot of the CB magazines touched on scanners as well.
Yeah,
because they go hand in hand. Yeah, and I'm privileged to have some of those. One of these days, I need to digitize a lot of stuff just to get rid of it, but just to see some of that stuff from back then as well. And you want to go back even further than that. Popular Electronics. I mean, it had. They used to run. I think it was about once a year or twice a year. They used to run the frequencies for all the major metros for scanners. And you'd see like Newark Fire Department in New Jersey on 154.13 or whatever. That was their only channel. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was back when you could, listen to an entire fire department, a city fire department on a single channel. So
absolutely.
So did you were you involved with the monitor station registry program with Tommy?
No, that was Tommy had a side business, which was called CRB Research, obviously, and advertised in the magazine. And Tommy produced a number of things through CRB Research. The monitor station registry was one of those. And you didn't know it was Tommy who was doing it. I mean, but if you compared the handwriting, and I could to his regular handwriting, it was Tommy. You know, I can't. I think I was KPA 3CA or something. I had one of those. People did that and had fun with that stuff. He also produced. They're like 4-page frequency sheets for metro areas. And of course, like you said, Rich, you know, city fire department is on one channel. So, you know, you throw a couple suburbs in there and fill 4 pages with frequencies for, you know, the New York metro area. And there you got your frequency guide in 4 pages. You know, and, you know, put on colored paper or whatever. And it was he used to sell a lot of those. And then, of course, he got into the books. You know, the biggest book that he ever did was the Top Secret Directory of the U.S. government frequencies. And he based that on his own monitoring, on his own notes, those that other people sent in. I believe he may have had access to the microfiche that some of us bought collectively from the U.S. government one time, and analyzed that information. And it was a good Bible for
it really was.
Yeah. So he produced a number of books, some CB books as well. Tommy, again, was so prolific that not only did he write in the magazine, he produced all that stuff for CRB Research, which was his own publishing arm.
Oh, yeah. He was always doing something.
Absolutely. And, you know, the thing that people don't understand is that he was handicapped, so to speak. That's not the correct term, politically correct. But Tommy, I believe, had polio or something and wasn't totally mobile. And so his writing was his craft. And that's something he could do well. And he did it. And he did it day in and day out. And I don't know that there'll ever be somebody as prolific as him for hobby radio ever again.
No. And it's it was really a loss when he passed away. It really was. But, you know, we joke around a lot about a lot of the stuff that Tommy has done and some of the programs he's run and stuff like that. But there was nobody like him. And he was a great asset to the hobby.
Yeah, and Tommy knew that. Tommy liked to incite readers. I'll go ahead and say it. He'd make up some of the letters to the editors at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd get people going back and forth. Yeah. And it was great because people saw different viewpoints. And he was able to present information in that avenue in a way that was informative. I mean, so sure, he'd
be the guy in a bucket brigade putting gasoline in the buckets, you know.
Exactly.
So the SSB network was one of these things too, probably.
Yep. Tommy was the SSB network. I think he was SSB 13, if I remember right. And the masthead of the magazine actually carried that with his amateur calls. So he went through a couple of amateur calls too. He wound up retiring down in Florida, which is where he died, with a four-land call. Of course, he was K2AES when he lived in New York, out on Long Island. But when he moved down to Florida, he got a 4 call, and I don't remember what that call was anymore. I mean, you know, K2AES is who Tommy was.
You were talking earlier about Newark Fire Department. Now they're on the state digital system in Jersey, and they basically operate on one talk group on that system, according to our resident Newark guy there.
Sure, and you know, I can pull that frequency out of my head so quickly because my the volunteer department my dad ran within the Philadelphia suburbs was on 154.13.
Yeah,
he had a plectron next to his bed, and when the squelch was open, that's all we heard was Newark. You know, this is 90 miles away, and with the little telescoping antenna on the plectron, and those things had such great sensitivity. We heard Newark all the time. We knew more of the fires in Newark than we did just around town.
Another one was called Tune In on Telephone Calls. That was a big one back in the days before ECPA.
Yeah, exactly.
And probably for a while afterwards.
Yep. Oh yeah, W4XAA. That was his call. Yep.
Yeah.
Tommy. Yeah.
Yeah, so he had a lot of stuff. So, and the other question that came up was about the SDS 200s being in stock, and this is a question that we get hourly on the phone. And the answer to that is, as soon as they're here, we're going to send out the emails to everybody who put their email in. We have no idea when they're going to arrive. We've been begging our distributors for them. There are 3 things going on. number one, a humongous demand.
Yeah, because people got into the scanner hobby.
Yeah.
The other thing is if people are lucky enough to be able to use the stimulus money as play money, they may purchase a radio, so there's that, and then of course the backlog from COVID, from the factory shutting down. I mean, there's a lot of things going on, but like you said, Rich, you sign up on our website, we will email you when it comes out. We don't know when it's going to show up until it shows up.
Exactly. And then the third part of it is the transportation. Everybody and their brother is shipping stuff as much as they can from overseas over here, and there is a humongous backlog at the ports, out on the water trying to get to the ports, and then from the ports trying to get to the to the interior. So yeah, it's crazy all the way around. When you sign in with your email address to be notified when they are in stock, you're going to get that email, but so is everybody else.
So sooner the better.
Click on that email, go to the link, buy the radio, and then get a hold of us on the phone if you want to add programming or options or something like that. We'll take care of that part over the phone. But get that in there, get the credit card number in there, get the radio purchased, and then you can call us and we can add the rest of the stuff. Call us right away so we don't ship the radio out before we send your accessories.
And the other thing too is if you want to help the scanner guys, right in the description of this video, hit our affiliate link. Go to the website and then order your SDS 100 or 200. That will help us a little bit as well. I mean, Scanner Master is a sponsor of the show, but it doesn't cover all the expenses. Yeah. And
I need a new microphone.
Your microphone's good.
I know.
You got enough toys over there.
So I think that is pretty much the extent of our comments.
Yeah. So let me
getting out on time today.
Yeah, what I'm going to do is do some bookkeeping, and then we'll wrap up things. So let me just put up a slide or two here. Let me remove that and remove that. All right, and let me put this up. So don't forget, next week we're live again right here on our YouTube channel. Download, if you have Roku or Apple TV, download the YouTube app. You can watch us there, or of course you can watch us on your smartphone, your tablet, or your computer. Next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, April the 28th, we're going to be talking about scanning the forestry services, the fires and things like that, and some of the things that they patrol. We may dip into some of the other services that are statewide as well on that show, so definitely tune into that. That'll be another alternative to be able to monitor on your scanner other than police and fire. So that's going to be a good show. And we've got a good show coming up in a couple of weeks from the Train Aficionado live show, an interview with Danny Harmon of Distant Signals. He's got a YouTube account, which is awesome. I mean, he does a phenomenal job with talking about the hobby, and then you're literally rail fanning with him in some of the videos. So he'll be joining us. Our next Train Aficionado Live is on the Train Aficionado YouTube channel. It'll be Wednesday, May the 3rd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to the social media for Train Aficionado, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and then check out the blog, trainaficionado.com. And don't forget, follow, like, and subscribe to our social media as well. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at The Scanner Guys. And then check out our official website, thescannerguyshow.com. You can purchase swag, sign up for our newsletter. And as always, we're brought to you by Scanner Master. Once again, Chuck, tell us where they can get the magazine and everything.
The magazine's available at Scanner Master. Go to scannermaster.com and click on, I believe, the electronic publications or books, and it pop up right there. That's the best place to get it right now.
Perfect. And it's $25, six
issues per year, $48 2 years, save $2. the DVD, our library DVD for America's Hobby Radio Magazine is $59 standalone. With 1 year access is $79. 2 years access, $99.
And how can you go wrong at that price? I mean, that's a phenomenal price. And the other thing too, you've got several columns, new columns coming up in the magazine, which is going to be great.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we want to keep moving forward and make it a publication that people turn to. And I think there's a lot of interesting activity going on out there in terms of direction, and we just need to be there to meet those needs.
And Chuck, the other thing too, well, before we leave, would you like to give your other gig a plug as well for those of people that are looking to get into ham radio?
Sure, the guys won't mind me doing that. Hamradioprep.com. It's a website you can go to. You can our course is totally online for both the if you're not licensed, the technician course is great. We've had literally tens of thousands of students who've gone through the courses on our website and have gotten their licenses. If you have a technician license, want to upgrade to general, we have a great course on there for that, and same with the extra as well. The technician course is $35 at present. The same with the general course. If you want to buy them both together, we'll cut you a deal, $49 for both of them together. You can't go wrong there.
That's for sure. Sounds good. Anything else that you want to plug before we sign off?
No, this is great. Glad to join in with you guys. Appreciate all the great comments in the sidebar here, and had a fun time.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you on again, and I guess that wraps it up for us. I mean, next week we'll have a really good show. We're actually going to talk about a new product on the next show, so definitely tune in for that. That's going to be a part of the broadcast. Once again, I'm Jonathan Higgins.
I'm Rich Carlson.
And I'm Chuck Gysi with National Communications Magazine.
And we thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you again next week right here on the channel. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button as well. That helps us out tremendously. So hopefully you have a good night. Thank you again.
Good night, all.
Good night.